What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to the 10th episode of the Peon podcast. Today, we got a doozy. I think this is probably one of my favorite episodes so far. Got Chef Christopher Haatuft of Lysverket restaurant in Bergen, Norway, who just got their first Michelin star. We talk a little bit about that. I think I found him. I was looking through a bunch of chefs and stuff that I follow and appreciate and stuff, and Greg Backstrom, he had done a dinner with him, and I saw this fantastic picture of Chef Haatuft with like fucking crusty punk, mohawk and a fucking crusty punk jacket and shit, and I was like, fuck yeah, I gotta talk to this guy, which we definitely get into. So Chef Haatuft is one of the smartest dudes I've ever talked to, one of the funniest dudes I've ever talked to. One of the things going into this episode I wanted to ask him about was why people who are like either on the punk side or metal side of society, the people who like throw their fists at fucking anything conventional, anything with authority, how they always end up in high-end kitchens. I don't know what it is. He has some better theories than my own, which we'll get into. But I still really don't know. I mean, a lot of the people that I've worked with have been punks, crust punks, metalheads, and they're some of the best people you work with, and they hold themselves to a really high standard. I don't quite know what that is, even though I'm one of those. I don't know what exactly draws me to it. Maybe it's certainly a sense of adrenaline and aggression and speed. That's why I don't really like music that's very mellow. Like people at work talk about, oh, you gotta like some country music. No, I hate it. It's like so slow. It's like honky tonk and that kind of shit. Now I want fucking like music's gonna go fucking hard, fast, like make me want to fucking, punch a wall, that kind of shit. I want it to, I want speed. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Another thing that we talk about is of going after things that are hard. I remember when I started the grill at my current restaurant, it was the hardest station I've ever worked in my life. And I remember some of my friends were asking me like, well, then why are you doing it? And my answer is like, well, then I think you should do things that are hard and that you don't want to do. I think a lot of my life has been doing that. Like I took a massive trip around the US because I was anxious and I didn't want to do it. And Chef Haatuft says something in this that I think like distills that idea down to one quote, which is if the only reason to say no is because it's more comfortable to say no, then you should say yes. I think that's a really good philosophy to live by, because if you're just like, I can't do that because it's really hard, well then you should do it because it's hard. And I felt like that was what happened when I worked grill at this place. And it's so fucking hard. It's like working 2 or 3 stations at once, and I'd never worked at a place of this caliber, this high end caliber, and so even that was stressful, and the pace was stressful, and making mistakes was stressful. But man, you come out so much better. Holy shit, man! My confidence skyrocketed. My capability as a cook just went through the fucking roof. I think it just in the space of like a few months. By doing that, by forcing myself to go through that anxiety and pain. And it was a hard time, but I'm much better for it, I think a lot of this conversation is kind of talking about that. And we also talk a little bit about like the necessity for that type of difficult experience. I think it is really necessary. I think if you want to do anything well in your field, I think you have to go through an experience that is particularly difficult and put you through the ringer a little bit, put some burns on your skin, some fucking scars on your hands, whatever it is, I think that shit's really worthwhile. Well, before we get into the episode, thanks again for sticking around. They've been a little inconsistent lately, but that's kind of has to do with some life changes and things like that, and also time and availability and stuff. But I'm planning to get a lot more going in the new year. The merch is still available if anybody wants to snag a hat or a shirt or anything like that, that's peonmagazine.com/store. Yeah, check it out. Patreon's still up there. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the listens, the shares, all that kind of shit. Keep it real short today. Give Chef Haatuft a follow. Check out his shit. He's got a restaurant down in Houston if you're in that area. Otherwise, you got to go to Norway. So do that too. All right. Enjoy this episode. It's one of my favorites. Enjoy. You're in Houston right now, right?
Right.
Did you already do the dinner with Paul, or is that coming up?
Dinner with Paul. I'm not sure I'm doing a dinner with Paul this time around.
Oh, okay. Oh, I just saw on your Instagram you and Paul Key, you were doing a dinner at his restaurant.
Oh, well,
was that a while ago?
Me and Paul, we have a restaurant together here.
Oh, yeah. At the Post Hall, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
Normally we'll do events when I'm here, but this time around I'm spending more time on the business side of things and trying to, work our numbers.
Oh, okay.
But I'm in the kitchen, but we're not doing events though.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. How often do you come to Houston then?
Maybe every second, third month.
Oh, okay.
I've been here.
I've been
here maybe, let's see, maybe 5 times so far this year.
Wow. Okay. Hey, and when did that restaurant open? I'm just now hearing about it. Really?
Oh, no, it opened last year. Opened when the Post opened, so about a year ago, a bit more than a year ago.
Okay. How's it going?
It's going. I mean, it's going good in some ways, and then it's hard in other ways, right? We have this kind of hybrid model of dine in a food hall, so
yeah,
that's a little bit hard to meet people's expectations of, our price point and the product, coupled
mm-hmm.
with that type of environment.
Oh yeah,
but we've gotten some better than expected press and accolades. So,
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So we didn't really have a lot of expectations coming into it, right? Like we were just going to try to cook some nice food and explore Texas seafood and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, like the food writers and stuff liked it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's
exciting.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this. So I pretty much just start at the beginning, really. Why'd you get into cooking, and what was your first food service job?
Oh, those two things are not related.
No.
Like if I go down way back, and my first job was selling ice cream out of one of those coolers that you strap over your shoulders. I was maybe 12 on the beach of Norway.
No way. Were you making the ice cream yourself, or were you just buying at the store and then?
No. There was some guy who took advantage of a bunch of kids selling ice cream for like nickels and dimes, but I got to walk in I don't know if this is politically correct or not, but in Norway or Europe, people sunbathe topless, right? So I was a 12-year-old kid. So I could, as a 12-year-old little boy, you're kind of harmless, right? So I could walk around the beach and sell ice cream to all these women.
These topless women?
Yeah, it was a dream job. That was my first foray into food service, right? Then my next job was picking strawberries in the fields, and what we did. We got paid per box of strawberries. So what we would do would just fill up the bottom of the box with rocks and gravel, and and then put some ripe strawberries on top. My third job was at a hamburger shop. So it was a small kiosk type hamburger shop. So I was maybe 14, 15, flipping hamburgers.
Okay, so that was your first cooking job.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it cooking, because with the cook you need to know what's going on, right? I was just told to put that frozen patty on that griddle and set the timer and drop the fries in the fryer, and then after that I didn't really cook until I didn't do I worked some bars and some stuff like that, but then when I turned around 2021, I got a job writing recipes for our local paper. So in the weekend edition, they gave me a double spread, and I would write a couple of recipes and some stories related to the recipes, and
Oh, dang. How did you get that job? How'd you line that up?
That's it. All sounds so weird, but so basically, a friend, like, I wasn't really doing anything constructive with my life at the time, and a friend of mine had this offsite catering gig where he would take on all kinds of crazy events, and then and he had no experience cooking, but he was a very knowledgeable foodie, right?
Uh-huh.
So sometimes he'd need help, and he'd ask me to come help him out just because I liked cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know. I thought it was always a party, right? So you could drink beer and grill some kebab or something like that. So I would help him out, and then I had and then because he was this guy who was known around town, like, he knew everybody. The newspaper asked him to take over that column, but he had very severe ADHD and he couldn't really concentrate and stuff like that. So he asked me if I want, like, he suggested to them that I do it solely based on that I liked helping him out, cooking every once in a while, and that I'd won a writing competition when I was 15, 16.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it was just like, I don't know, like a 500-word small story about, well, it was about a soup, but it was a long story. It was my delinquent days. Anyway, the point is that the newspaper gave me this article. They gave me this weekly column, and I would bullshit my way through the column every week because I didn't know what I was talking about. So I would. This was 2001 or something, right? So it was kind of pre-internet, not pre-internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
like it wasn't as big. The internet wasn't as prevalent. Yeah.
Well, put it this way: you were using Alta Vista, not Google, at that time.
Oh.
So, anyway, I did that for a couple of years, and then as long as you write something in a paper, you're an expert. So people with less knowledge than you, they treat you like an expert, right? So I got approached by somebody that wanted to open a bar that also served food, and they asked me if I wanted to be the chef. And I said, sure, no problem.
So you just went straight to the top. Did you have any like kitchen experience besides just flipping frozen patty? Zero. Wow.
Yeah. But I thought, how difficult is that? You write a menu, you cook some stuff every day.
Wait, where were you getting these recipes from? Were you just making them up, just bullshitting the recipes, or did you actually like cook as a kid?
The trick to writing recipes is you Google a recipe and you change out a couple of ingredients, right? Because it's not you'll never find a recipe that's not been written before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Anyway, so I started to open this restaurant with them, or bar restaurant, and then they very quickly saw what was going on and pulled out. And me and my buddy was left to own and manage it. And at the same time, we're also trying to go hard as crusty punk rock kids. Yeah. So we would have these like the home style Detroit punk rock shows, like on the floor of your apartment.
Oh yeah, house shows and stuff. Yeah.
So we would have that type of punk rock shows in the dining room.
Bar. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it failed. Needless to say, it failed. And
were you playing any? Was it friends playing those shows, or did you guys actually get like some big acts coming through?
Nah, it was a bit of, not big acts, but it was mainly friends and local bands, and some of our friends had booking agencies that would have bands that were traveling through, but anyway, so it closed, and after that, I was kind of lost in the desert for a couple of years, and then I kind of, the lifestyle we had been living starting to kind of get real. So I jumped ship a bit and started, I started an apprenticeship program. So I didn't go to cooking school, but I just started working in restaurants. And at the end of that, there was an exam. And then after that, that's how I got my degree. But I wasn't done. I didn't get my degree until I was like 27 or something, I think.
Oh, so that whole time you were working how long did that bar gig last?
2-3 years, I think.
Oh wow, you guys made it a while then, actually.
well, I don't know if
The way you made it, the way you made it sound.
we didn't make it a single day, but we were open for 2 years. I think.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it, I guess. Do you remember what sort of food you were cooking? Did you even like?
I remember the first menu. We had like different types of we went classic with mussels and different types of codfish, and it was like a nice menu. I'm sure if I read that menu today, it would probably look like a menu. Of course, it would look like it was written by a toddler, but it was still like it still kind of had the major food groups on it. And then I remember our first service, there was tables waiting for 2 hours on their food, and
jeez,
that feeling of being in the weeds at the time was completely new to me.
Yeah.
And if you've been in the weeds, that is a fairly horrible, crushing feeling, right?
Oh, it's
but at least now we expect it. We know what we're
exactly.
When you get that prickly sensation in the back of the neck, like you don't panic because you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, what is this? Like what is it? Full dining room. That means what? Like, oh shit, this table is pissed off. Why the hell are they pissed off? They got to relax, man. I'm working on their food. I know it's been a while, but shit, you don't see me working.
It's ready when it's ready, that kind of thing. Yeah. Shit.
Yeah. All this irrational behavior from the guests, So,
oh man.
No, so and then after a while, we did what every failing restaurant does. We pivoted to burgers.
Yeah, right.
And we did some nice burgers, but I don't know. It's not an advisable route to go.
No, yeah. Wait, so did you kind of like I guess for lack of a better word, like clean up your act when you ended up doing that apprenticeship, or were you still pretty crusty and okay?
No, yeah. We came from this we came from the old branch of European punk rock, you know what I mean? Like the leather jacket, studs, and drugs. And it got a bit too real, not like anything like Requiem for a Dream type of real, but it was just like you see the signs and you're like, all right, like this.
Yeah, you see where it's going a little bit. Yeah.
It wasn't fun. It was too much anger, like it was.
Oh yeah.
It was all fun, and then after a while, people feel alienated and angry, and
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Where was that apprenticeship at? Did you?
That was it. So what I did is, in Norway, you either normally you go to school for 2 years and then you apprentice for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go to school, you can apprentice for the entire 4 years. But then whatever experience you have leading up to that, lets you cut down on the time that you apprentice.
Okay.
So you have to document your experience. So for my fast food Kia, hamburger shop when I was 15, that was a traditional American cuisine. Right, I had experience in traditional American cuisine, and that gave me, half a year off, or whatever. So I did 2.5 years. I ended up getting 2.5 years of apprenticeship, and I split that between 3 different restaurants because I was, a mix of restless and arrogant. Like I thought I knew what I was doing, and that I didn't have that much to learn from one place, and I wanted to spread it out, which I guess worked out kind of, but I wouldn't say again. Like I would suggest people find one place and stay for a longer period in the beginning than jump around in the beginning. But it was local restaurants back home in my hometown of Bergen in Norway. Find that.
Yeah. Did any of them look at your resume as a head chef and sort of ask you about that, or did you?
You pay him as a commis, but he has head chef experience. That's funny. I haven't thought of that.
As that in America would be like, oh shit, why are you going for this line cook job when you were a head chef? But
I don't know. We see some weird resumes though.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we see some weird ones at my job too. But after your apprenticeship, where did you end up going? So
that was it. Like this was So let's say the first year of my apprenticeship, I was working at a sustainable restaurant, and this was 2006. So
Okay.
this was right when maybe Noma was just getting started. It didn't have international fame yet. The whole farm to table, none of that stuff was really, it hadn't landed yet, like when Dan Barber got his review in the New York Times, it was still groundbreaking stuff, right? So imagine how it was in a tiny city in Norway. So I worked with this amazing lady who was very much pioneering locavorism in my region.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice, but it was also a small like lunch restaurant that did omelets and this kind of stuff. I wanted to do fine dining, so I ended up my last year at the like old school fine dining restaurant of my hometown, and then all the while doing that, like I think a thing that set me a little bit apart from the kids that I was apprenticing with and working with was that, like, I knew that I was 25, 26. Like I knew that I was competing for jobs with these kids that just by sheer age would have 10 years on, or like 6 years on me, right?
Yeah.
For the same salary. So you look around the kitchen, there's not a single person older than like 28. So I figured if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to be smart. So luckily I always loved like reading and studying, like trying to, I was a horrible student. Like I dropped out of school early, but I always liked I'm immersing myself in like geeking out over stuff. So
yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah.
Right. So at that time, like in 2006, 7, 8, there was a lot of these internet like messaging boards and forums.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still novel, and it wasn't, people hadn't gotten internet smart, like social media smart, and there wasn't a bunch of journalists and stuff like that. So people would discuss very openly and freely, and it was just at the time where you got nice digital SLR cameras.
Okay.
So there would be there was a website called eGullet that I would go on from Norway, where all these top chefs, especially in the US, they were using this website to connect, and at that time they would trade ideas for, like, they would be exploring like molecular gastronomy type of stuff, right?
Oh, that's really cool. Okay.
Yeah, because it was also for amateur cooks, and anyone could log into these forums and discuss. So there would be like a chef talking about sous vide and how the different temperatures affects the proteins in the meat, and then maybe a doctor or a physicist, a scientist or something that understood the actual science. They would write, they would discuss, they would make these charts over like what's called a collagen denaturing collagen or whatever, time and temperature kind of thing, and it was geeking out on that, but it wasn't just like cooks like me. It was like Grant Achatz and these very high level cooks writing on this forum. So I was reading that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was very democratic in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading that, and this was at the same time as Alinea had just opened, and they had these long threads of like you could go back and you could see the whole process of them opening and doing their R&D dinners at Nick Konis's place. So I just wrote him an email. Like I fished his email out of his account and emailed him and asked for an internship.
Mm-hmm.
And he accepted. So I went straight from the restaurant I was at back in Norway straight to Chicago, and came into that environment there in 2007. Wow. Yeah, and
was that like a huge like jump for you? Because like Alinea, I don't know what it was like back then, but I can imagine it was pretty tight, very very controlled, like a Michelin star kitchen. Yeah. So was that a huge jump for you?
Yeah, that was definitely a life-changing experience. Like,
yeah.
In hindsight, it's easier to see, what some of these experiences. The situations that kind of set the path towards where you're at, like that, walking into that kitchen and seeing that completely, like that shook my world. Like I had never seen anything like that. It wasn't like I had like suspended gel senses for not showing up to military service and stuff like that. Right. So like
oh, damn.
As a punk rock kid, like I had a total lack of respect for authority, and So just the idea of that stuff really didn't sit well with me. But walking into a kitchen like that, where it's so structured and disciplined and hierarchical,
Hmm.
like for some reason, like that was all right. You know what I mean? Like, and that completely,
Yeah.
like it just made total sense. And it was so there's such an energy that came off all these kids. They're like running around the kitchen with purpose, working, super fast and clean and with such pride
Oh
and
yeah.
like you'd have two 19-year-old kids working shoulder to shoulder, trying to keep each other motivated and like nitpicking on quality and stuff. And it's just like it was just completely foreign to me. And after that, it gave me some well, didn't set some standards in me because it's taken me quite a while to adopt just even some of it, but at least it showed me what it can be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That high bar.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about that late, like after being there, like why that is, because I've seen the same type of like there's a type of kinship you feel with the people in the kitchen, and I remember at Per Se we were standing on like we were online for service one night, and one of the sous chefs or something did like a head count on who was old punk rock kids, and it was like I don't know, like five out of seven online
Yeah.
had this punk rock background, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because
No, not
it's
at all.
almost the opposite. But there's probably something about the adrenaline and the
Oh
feeling
yeah.
of maybe the feeling of being on the side of normal society a bit, like
Yeah. Like it's kind of like a weird, like cult
probably the
kind of
same as
thing.
being a musician, right? Like you live your life
Yeah.
on the road and you work Fridays and Saturday nights when everybody's off. Like so when everybody else is having fun, that's when you work. And then when
Yeah.
everybody's at work, that's when you relax, right? So you always live like parallel to normal life. And
Yeah.
I
Oh
guess
yeah.
and it's also I remember as a kid, it was always a competition of being the most extreme, like being the
Oh yeah.
most fucked up, or being,
Yeah.
you went to these festivals and parties and shows or whatever. It wasn't about who could, you didn't get points for acting normal. You got points for being the craziest, right?
Craziest one. Yeah. Yeah.
And the same in the kitchen, you get points for not being the craziest, but applying like being the best, like in a daily competition and being hardcore and
Yeah.
it's not just about sharpening your knives; it's about having them the sharpest all the time and never letting your standards slip. And these type, I don't know, it was just
Yeah.
there's something that reverberates around between the
Yeah.
two that I don't, I haven't, I'm not going to try to articulate it. I mean, it's not that important, you know what I mean? But it's just
Yeah.
funny. It's funny that
It's very
that
interesting. Yeah. That a lot of punk and metal people end up in kitchens, and
yeah,
especially in
but
high
I
end
think the
kitchens.
U.S. thing though, because
Yeah.
my friends from London that worked at these Gordon Ramsay kitchens and stuff, like they're ordinary kids, kind of, like or
Oh
we're
really?
all now, but I don't know this. And in Norway, it's not anything like that. It's also more cookie cutter type of kids coming up through high school. But in the U.S., for some reason, there's more of that counterculture in the
Huh.
kitchens.
Yeah. That's
That's
really
my
interesting.
very unscientific analysis of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure why either. Because I definitely see both types of people. But I see a lot more people that are kind of hardcore in some way and extreme, and they like the extremes that kitchens have. It's a very interesting juxtaposition. Because it's like you really shouldn't be in that environment if you're anti-authoritarian, but somehow it works. I don't know.
Yeah, but then it's also meritocracy, right? It's not a
Oh yeah,
authority for
it's
the
true.
sake of authority. Like if you don't know what you're talking about, you can't prove it. Then you get cut down very quickly.
Yes, yeah, that's true. That's very
Well,
true.
if the police comes up to you and start flaunting their authority, they haven't proven anything except a badge of suit.
Yeah,
So it's not the same.
yeah,
It's not really the same. Like it's not an unquestionable authority. It's
that's
like
a good point.
you got to a point where you're proving yourself. That's why you have that authority. And you see, that's the worst type of kitchen manager or any manager, is somebody that is given the authority, but they can't. There's no merit behind it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. So did you enjoy that experience at Alinea? I've heard
I loved it.
various things. I've heard it's a very hard kitchen to
Yeah,
work
it
in.
was hard, but I mean, yeah, I loved it. I completely, I 100% loved it, and it changed my life, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I hadn't have done it. And I was only there
Yeah.
for a couple of months, like I didn't
Oh,
at the
really?
time.
Okay.
But the hard part of it, like the kitchens that I learned the most have all been stupid hard, and I don't know
Did you do that by design, or did it just kind of happen?
that they're hard. No, that
Yeah. Like, did you choose the hardest kitchens you could find, or did it just
yeah,
happen because that was?
sometimes I did. Like sometimes I've like when I went to Per Se, I had a couple of different options of places to go, and I was like it was literally a split second, not decision, but I was the chef. I did a trail shift there, and at the end of the night, the chef actually thought I was there just to hang out. So when I asked him, "So what's the next steps for getting a position here?" He was
Yeah.
confused. He's like, "What? You're here for a job?" And like when he asked that question, the thought that ran through my head was, if I answer yes now, then that's me setting myself up for this type of experience. If I say no, that's the
Yeah.
easy way out.
Yeah.
I thought, well, the most difficult thing I can do the hardest thing I can do in my life is to say yes and try to get this position here.
Yeah.
And there's no reason not to do it. It's just a coward decision not to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said yes, and I got the job, and it's like that mentality has followed me a bit. Like if the only reason to say no is because it's more comfortable to say no, you should say yes. So, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. This whole question about is it necessary that it's so hard to be in that type of learning experience? And I guess it's individual. Like for me, it was like I still
Yeah.
struggle with discipline, right? Like self motivation and
Yeah.
following through on stuff.
Same
That
here.
if they hadn't have put me to the fire, then like I would never be able to better myself if it was all on my own time and my own accord. Like I had to be put
Yeah.
in a situation in an environment where literally everybody around me is better than me, and the expectations are sky high. They're
Oh, yeah.
so much higher than what I can naturally provide.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm the same way. Like, I feel like, if you put yourself in that really difficult situation, you know that you're going to force yourself to get better. Whereas if that's not behind you, then you're not going to really do it.
right, but then there is maybe an expectation now that you should be able to get that experience in a more comfortable environment where the expectation,
Yeah.
the like management's expectations and way of expressing their expectations is I'm not saying that there's not abusive environments, but there's a difference in telling somebody what you're doing right now is not good enough,
Yeah.
and you continue on this path, I can no longer employ you, right? That's a
Yeah.
fairly subjective statement, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you shouldn't start with that. You should start with, I can see that you're struggling with this task. Let me help you. And let me know how can I be of assistance to you so that you can succeed in, your job. But at some point, if you're not scoring any goals, you get put off the team, right?
Yeah.
And in sports, we accept it.
Yeah.
We
That's true.
celebrate it. We celebrate it. Like it's those are the heroes. And if you didn't make the team, nobody cares. But in the kitchen, I think lately it's become a little bit. I don't know. I feel like it's too easy to villainize that type of management of a place like Alinea
Yeah.
without seeing the merits of it as well. Like not saying that you shouldn't treat people right, but and that said, like I didn't see anything at Alinea that wasn't right. Like there was people were hardcore and whatever, but I mean, and I was definitely the odd one out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I loved it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. 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 I think there's people that thrive in that environment and some people that don't. And I feel like people tend to forget even if there is like a chef that's being vilified for some sort of for the way that they run their kitchen, there's a bunch of people still in that kitchen who really appreciate it and really thrive in that environment. So that often gets overlooked, I think. You know, there are people like you and myself who want to be in that environment and want to be pushed and want to make themselves better, you know?
Yeah. And that's it. Like Grant, Chef Atkins, he was nothing but a gentleman the entire time I saw him there. And then, so I don't necessarily put that restaurant in that category, but I mean, I guess you can't really say that without also saying that the lack of management experience that young managers in these high stress environments have, that has led to some really horrible results though, you know, like that's been the whole conversation the last couple of years have mainly been around sexual abuse and you know, the Me Too conversation, but I feel like something that's not really been talked about as much is abusive behavior and the mental torture that some of these managers have put kids through.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And that's different. That's different from high expectations, though. You know, like I feel like some of the best managers I've had in these high stress environments, they've been uncompromising on their expectations to you, and it's been rough. You know, like you feel like you're letting everybody down, and you're letting yourself down, but they've also offered help to the extent of that can be expected. You know, at some point you can't expect them to give you more help because you're not just performing the task that you're given, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
It all often gets lumped in the same bag.
Yeah, that is very true.
Because of the feeling the cook or the young person or whatever is left with, the feeling is the same. Like if I scream at you for, you know, like an animal in a completely unreasonable way, or if I tell you, I'm sorry, but I have to let you go because you just can't cook at the level you're expected to. Like the feeling you're left with is the same, right? Like it's not a big difference in the end result of those two lines of communication.
Yeah.
And it's often that person, whatever that person who dictates the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't really have a microphone for the person who said, well, I gave this kid all these chances and blah, 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 you know? And it's in Norway.
It's true. They don't get to explain themselves.
Right. And in Norway, in this social democracy that we have, where there's an expectation that there's room for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? And it permeates culture and government and everything. It's very hard for people to understand that. Like my fine dining restaurant back home, we get international press, right? So we are compared with businesses internationally, the same as a sports team in Europe, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
The rules are similar to international sports.
Yeah,
and there's just not room for everybody, you know, on a team.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's a meritocracy, and people forget that about kitchens. You know, that if you can't do the job, well, then you're not making the team really. And sometimes it's harsh, and sometimes it hurts a lot of feelings, but it is what it is, really.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my story at Alinea. I loved it.
Yeah. Did you feel the same way at Per Se? Was that where you went next? Per Se?
Well, after Alinea, I hurt my foot. When I was at Alinea, I hurt my foot, so I had to go back to Norway, and it kind of put me out of play for a little while. And when I was there, I helped open a restaurant, and then I moved to Paris after that. I spent a year in Paris. And
cooking or just traveling? Yeah,
cooking, because the Norwegian embassies, they normally have they'll normally employ a young Norwegian cook to cook at to live in and cook at the different embassies. So it's a real cushy job where
that's really cool.
Yeah, you're given an apartment and, you know, an okay salary, and you don't really work that much. But for me and my wife at the time, it was an opportunity to live in Paris, drink wine, eat nice food, you know, learn how to be a guest at a restaurant. And I did that for a year, got fat. And then my friend, one of my friends that I made at Alinea, Greg Backstrom, who has Olmsted in Brooklyn, he was offered the head chef job at Blue Hill at Stone Barns. Oh, and wow. The coincidence is that at the time I was reading, I I think right before he sent me that email and told me about the offer, I read a tweet or something from Grant Atkins of him having had the best ricotta in the world at this place, Blue Hill at Stone Barns.
Yeah.
So I started reading about it, and then out of the blue, my buddy emails me and he says, "Oh, I've been offered the head chef job at this place. What do you think?" And I said, "Shit, take that job and I'll move over there and work with you." Right?
Yeah.
So we did that, and
That's incredible.
Yeah, so I spent a year there, and then I had like half a year after that where I was bouncing around a little bit, writing a cookbook for farmers market back home, and then I worked at Per Se for a year, and then moved back to Norway.
What was Blue Hill like? I know a little bit about it, but was he working with farmers at that point, developing the vegetables, or was it still just a restaurant?
No, so Blue Hill in Manhattan, that's just a restaurant in down by Washington Square or something. Mm-hmm. And the one at Stone Barns is up by the Rockefeller State Park Reserve. So it was a large farm that I think like Peggy Rockefeller owned or something, and then they donated it to this foundation, and they set up an educational program and for the different schools around that area, as well as a lot of collaborative agriculture with Cornell University or some of these universities. And on the property, they built this beautiful restaurant that's Blue Hill. And they commissioned Dan Barber. So the property is Stone Barns, and then they commissioned Dan Barber to bring his Blue Hill concept to Stone Barns.
Okay. It must be insane working that close to a farm.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing, man. Like that was, like, it wasn't as disciplined as Alinea. And it felt a lot bigger. They did a lot of big events and stuff like that. But the closest to nature and Dan's vision on bringing the farm into the dining room. Yeah. Like it really taught me a lot on how to look at, sustainability, product, interaction with the guest, it was very, in the way a place that serves an organic carrot can be avant-garde. It was very, 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 it's been pushing the boundaries. So that again, to me also was like a very defining, time of my career, I guess you can call it.
Yeah. So you went to Per Se after Blue Hill, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you a cook there as well, or were you some sort of a sous or?
No. I thought that's the thing. Like after Blue Hill, like I've always had grandiose ideas of myself, right? So after a year at Blue Hill, like going to Blue Hill, I thought I was going to be a sous chef, and I come up there and they put me online. And first of all, I don't understand a word that people are saying to me, right? Like the whole terminology in American kitchen is so different than of course Norway, but the way of all the restaurants back home in Norway are very small. A cook they're normally like 3-4 cooks at work at a time, and there won't be a pastry chef or dishwasher and stuff like that. So you just do everything, right?
Yeah,
and you have your own tickets, and it's not as a brigade. It's not like the brigades here in the U.S. or France or these places. So I was put on an entremet station. And there was an expo on our line. So there was, There was the head chef and 2-3 expos on the different lines. So like there was a garde manger expo, a fish and entremet expo, and a meat expo, right? Together with the head chef who's more outward facing towards the guests. Then the sous chef in charge of my line was a Mexican guy with a very broad accent. And like I speak English because my mom is American and I grew up speaking English, but I never lived in the U.S. So I don't know, like sometimes I guess my English seems better than it is, right? But then this guy was calling out orders and I couldn't for the life of me understand what he was saying.
Oh God. Yeah.
And on top of that, he was using the terminology like, for those who are not familiar with how things are expedited in the kitchen, you say, you're out on, pick up, fire, out before, get ready. There's all these different ways of communicating timing. Yeah.
And you didn't understand any of those terms?
And on top of that, I wasn't used to working in that type of environment. So I would say, excuse me, chef, what exactly does out on me. And this is when it's busy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the poor guy was so frustrated. This stupid Norwegian guy was like, "You don't understand. I'm telling you." So wait a minute. What's the difference of fire and get ready? Oh, like I didn't have any sense of urgency or anything.
Oh shit, man.
On top of it's all, on top of that, I just hadn't cooked and that those like I didn't really know how to cook. Like I would know, you give me a piece of meat and I would cook it nicely, but give me 10 pieces of meat and then give me 10 minutes on this 10, I wouldn't even know where to start. So,
Yeah. Jesus.
so it was just so much technique that was expected of me, and I failed horribly. And then at the same time,
Oh man.
I would walk around the kitchen and be like, "Yeah, I'm going to be Greg, my buddy. I'm going to be a sous chef." And and I think Dan at some point just was like, "Yeah, this isn't working out." And I went,
Oh
"Fuck,
damn.
man, I'm going to get fired. Like that is so embarrassing. You know, I'm this rock star and I'm going to get fired. That's so unfair." And he kept me on. So he didn't fire me, but he kept me on.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't get a sous chef position. Me and our friends Sonny and Greg, like we kind of ran the kitchen, like I helped Expo and run the meat program and stuff like that. But it was a very, very, very steep learning curve. I lost
Wow.
30 pounds like in a month or two, and
Jeez.
it was very humbling, but not humbling enough, because after that. I started looking for jobs at other places, and because of my experience there, where I basically was a sous chef, but I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
I was expecting. I remember I trailed at EMP, and it was like they offered me a job at the Nomad that they were opening. And I was like, "Yeah, but is it gonna be a sous chef position?" They're like, "No." It's like, "Yeah, I don't know." So when I went to Per Se, I figured, well, I guess at Per Se, it's okay to be a line cook. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't have to be a sous chef at Per Se. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was kind of an asshole, I guess.
How old were you at this point?
Oh, I was old, man. I remember at Per Se, I bought some nice red sneakers, and then one of the other line cooks in the locker room, he looks at me and he goes, they're very youthful. Like, fuck you, man. I'm 30. But I was this weird old guy at Per Se at 30.
Was there a lot of young people, like 20 somethings in the kitchen
Yeah,
at Per
my
Se?
sous chef was 24. You know,
Holy
23,
shit, man.
24. Yeah, Danny Calvert. He just got a second star in Tokyo now. He's an absolute beast of a cook.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Holy shit, man. I'm in the same boat. I was always
That's why I moved back to Norway as well. Right. You know, like
Yeah.
I moved back to Norway because at 32, I was 32 then when I left Per Se, because I was a line cook. I've been there a year. There was not a single sous chef that had been there less than 3 years.
Mhm.
So, you know, that would put me at like 34, 35. And then, you know, you put in a couple extra years, all of a sudden, boom, you're 40 years old, and then you have to start your own thing. And Norway is everything in Norway is just easy. So I knew that back home, and like I was also very naive about that because I didn't really know exactly what it entailed, but I did kind of feel like I knew that in Norway I can open my own restaurant fairly easy. While in the U.S., in New York, you can forget about it, right? You need investors and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I figured I'm going to move back to Norway. I knew, like, I was cynical enough knowing that if I moved back to Norway with having these restaurants under my belt, it's the type of experience nobody else has back home. And you know, it doesn't matter if you're there 1 or 3 years, kind of in the public perception of it. Of course, you know. So I knew I kind of had that in the bag already, but a thing I didn't really my only regret, I don't regret in that sense, but the only thing I feel like was a mistake, I should have spent more time at Per Se.
How long did you spend there?
A year.
Just a year?
Yeah, right. So, you know, I made some really dear friends. I got articles. The amount of attention I've gotten from my short time at Per Se is not indicative with the job that I did there, or, you know, the time that I spent, you know?
Yeah.
But again, it's like, who gives a shit? You know, it's like I'm not self-conscious about that. If somebody wants to write in the article that I work these places, no problem, man. Like,
Yeah.
I know I didn't put the time required to really own it, but like it's just us between us that judge ourselves like that. It's not,
Yeah. That's
the
true.
journalist and the public, they don't give a shit. They don't know the difference in
Yeah.
1 and 3 years in one of these places. So
Yeah.
like they don't know the difference in 3 and 7 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they don't
Yeah.
know
It's true.
when it turns embarrassing that you only worked, even though you worked at one place. Like, cooks start looking down at you if you worked at a 3 Michelin star your entire life. It's like, what, you didn't move to another one? Like it's all
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I know, and I'm confident enough now that I know that the time, like the literal 10 years I've spent in my own restaurant is that's what really matters. It's what have I been able to do with my own stuff.
Yeah. So did you go straight back to Norway and open your restaurant there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I was naive but lucky. I just found my old business plan, and my business plan is eerily similar to what I actually did, except
Uh-huh.
for it didn't include any of the numbers.
Uh-huh.
But the theme of the restaurant and what we wanted to be and the positioning and all that shit, that's the same. But we didn't really have any money. We're like, it was me and a friend of mine who's a cook. We wanted to open something together. We had, I don't know, like $50,000 between us or something like that. And
Yeah.
the spaces that we were actually looking at before we found the one we were in was not very realistic. But I didn't know at the time, right? Like just
What do you mean? Like they were too big or too
no, it's
small
just
or?
like we found a nice corner location, but it didn't have a kitchen.
Mhm.
I could have pulled the trigger on something that I would halfway through the build out find out that, oh shit, 50% of a kitchen build out might be the ventilation, right?
Yeah.
When the
Yeah,
price
of
of the
course.
kitchen is 200,000, you got to add at least 50,000 just in plumbing and electricity on top of that. Stuff like that
Yeah.
that you don't
Yeah.
that you have to like. It has taken me quite a few kitchens to really be able. Like I've built quite a few kitchens now, and like now I kind of know, but I still don't really know. But then I had no clue, right? And we
Yeah.
were lucky because we found it. Look, like I got approached by my initial partners at Lysverket, where I'm at now, because it was an existing restaurant
Okay.
where the landlord approached my friend and asked him to put a concept in, and that's how the concept came about. And that was like I moved home in December, and in March I had the keys to the space, and in
Wow.
June we were open.
That's very lucky. Wow. So you
Very
didn't
lucky.
have to build out a kitchen at all or waited for any of that shit. You just
No, it had the ventilation and some walk-ins and stuff like that, and we built like a campsite type of kitchen underneath that hood. We bought some really cheap equipment and we just knuckle through it
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we didn't have money to do anything else, and I was also scared of putting in all this equipment in a space, and like I didn't know the restaurant is fairly big, and we did lunch, dinner, events, all this stuff in the same space.
Wow.
So I didn't really know exactly what that kitchen would have to look like to be efficient. And then the year after, I built a Cadillac of a kitchen, and luckily, and it's luck, that kitchen that layout was nice, and I haven't had to redo that since. So that's almost 10 years now. Well, that's like 8 years now. So
Wow. Yeah. And what's in that kitchen? I think I looked it up. It's like a yellow charcoal grill,
yeah, so
like a range and
it's a high end, like Spanish high end kitchen designer who a lot of Norwegian restaurants have used, and it's all like seamless benches and very custom stuff.
Mhm.
But in Norway, electricity is fairly cheap, and we don't really have the same infrastructure on gas as you have here.
Uh-huh.
So and I also prefer induction vastly over. Like I hate cooking on gas. I think it is a very clumsy cooking medium, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I have 9 5,000 kilowatt inductions, which is a lot. That's
That's yeah.
very, 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 very high powered inductions, and then but also like which are great for pan roasting and sauce work and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I also love cooking over live fires, so I built like just a kind of fire pit in the like recessed into the bench where we
Yeah.
have charcoal. So most of our meats and some of the seafood is cooked on that charcoal.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's something about that where I don't like at Blue Hill would do a lot. I don't think they do it anymore to the same extent, but they did a lot of sous vide stuff with the meat,
Hmm.
and at Per Se it was opposite. They did a lot of a la minute charcoal grilling and rotisserie and stuff. And there's something about the vibrancy of the like you can't to me in my opinion meat dies in a bag. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't when you
Yeah.
the juice and the freshness and the acidity of the blood and all that stuff. Like it kind of I don't know. I don't like it. And also, it doesn't teach your kids how to cook. And
Yeah, for sure.
so anyone who starts online with me, like not even start, like nobody gets to work that grill without a timer, right? And that's like everybody always feel like they know how to cook, but then mid service, if you're doing individual steaks on a charcoal grill without a timer, it can be fairly. I would guarantee you that you'll not cook them consistently well, right?
Yeah.
So a timer,
Okay.
like the guys who work online at Lysverket, they really, really, really learn how to cook. Like they become very, very, very strong all around cooks from that
Yeah.
setup, the inductions and the grill together with the grill.
Huh. That's an interesting setup. I've never heard of so many induction burners.
Well, it's
That's really
just
cool.
I
Yeah.
built. It's basically It's a 4x4 and a single. So the 4x4 is like a flat top, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
there's three stations on that line. There's basically two identical stations on like fish and meat,
Okay.
with each their four top induction with the grill in between them, and then the garde station has a single induction and a salamander or a broiler.
Okay.
So it's not as excessive as it sounds. It's just like basically two flat tops, right?
Yeah. 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 Did the idea of forging did that start from the beginning or is that something you developed
No,
as,
that was in the beginning because when we opened the restaurant, we knew like we were very ambitious, and I had a lot of my a lot of my friends that I work with in the U.S. Every time they were between jobs, they would travel,
uh-huh.
and so I had a lot of people swing by the restaurant and spend time with us, and also Bergen being in Norway, far away from the markets in Paris and these places, it's hard to have that. Like, you can't find product at the same quality as easily as you can, in New York or Paris or these places. So also
Yeah.
I wasn't like I wanted to have a unique take on like I wanted to cook with local ingredients. And my
Yeah.
point is, there's not that much local ingredient available if you go through traditional channels. So, and my hometown is like literally on the North Sea with a bunch of islands and stuff around there. So,
Hmm.
yeah, we just started going out to the islands with marine biologists and divers and stuff like that, and having them
Wow.
educate us on what kind of seaweed and stuff like that we could eat, and all the different there's back then 10 years ago the variety of seafood that you could buy from the distributors was of course less than what it is now because there just wasn't it's like we have a variety of a quahog, the big clams.
Okay.
So when
Yeah.
you go diving, you can see the bottom of the ocean is littered with these giant clams, but nobody was eating them at the time, right?
Really?
Yeah, so like we would just have the diver bring us all this stuff, and we'd go diving with them and bring it back up and try out all these different things, and then a friend of mine came from Noma, and we
Uh-huh.
were joking about how they were foraging everything, and that was so old school because what we did was foraging, and it was
Yeah.
funny, and it kind of turned into a thing. But
Yeah.
again, I would say it was like 50% just marketing because I know that every single journalist would want those
Yeah.
pictures,
Yeah.
and
For sure.
and it did define the food that we made for a very long time. Not so much anymore because not all of this foraged stuff tastes nice, like,
Hmm.
and very often it takes away like the restaurant focuses too much on the genius of the chef and too little on the experience of the diner, and you get these long spiels about fermented pine needles, and you can't really taste it in the food, or it doesn't taste that
Yeah.
nice, or it's interesting, or because you want to highlight it, you can only do it in a small amount, so you end up having 20 courses and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
lately, the last couple of years, I've toned it down, and we still use a lot of this stuff, but I don't necessarily talk about it as much, and it's not as important. It's not as important to our culture and in the restaurants and my marketing, I guess.
Do you find that diners like sort of look for that kind of stuff, or do you
Less
think they're
less than they did.
really?
Yeah,
Really?
I think so. I think diners. I don't know. I feel like I've definitely taken a very conscious move away from like having the kitchen and the chef being the lead to trying to have to be more empathetic of what the diner needs or why the diner is in the restaurant. And then like I definitely know that my local clientele, the more often you interrupt them with a story about this snail that the kitchen staff went out this morning and we foraged these snails and this is on your dish and blah blah blah, like they don't give a shit, you know.
Yeah.
And then some of the visiting guests, they will find that very exciting because it's all part of their whole Nordic adventure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my restaurant is in a town of just below 300,000 people, so I get a lot of repeat business, and
Yeah.
and the repeat business, they have their preferences, right? And if their preference is not natural wine, and
For sure.
skin macerated Slovenian, indigenous varieties of whatever,
Yeah.
but they want their oaky shard from Burgundy, then like that's my business. My business is to give them what they want, and within the framework of the ethos of my restaurant. But still, I feel like there's been too much of a emphasis on the storytelling and
Oh yeah, for
the
sure.
restaurants, the restaurant, why this specific restaurant is so unique, and the educational part and all that stuff. Like I
Yeah.
very, very, very
Oh yeah.
quickly, I've always been at odds with a lot of the farm to table and the local, some of these organizations initiatives for local farmers, because they've been back home, because like I've gone to the Union Square green market, so I know what a
Mhm.
nice green market looks like, right? And what like if you go there in tomato season, you'll find the best tomato grower in the Hudson,
Mhm.
and the tomatoes will be amazing, right? Back home, there's so many initiatives around just straight local small scale producers where they expect that the fact that it's small scale adds value to it, and it's my job as a restaurant to convey that value to the guest and upcharge for it. And I say that's not right. Like this apple juice just tastes like apples, not like a normal apple juice. I can't charge a premium just because it's grown down the street.
Yeah.
Unless it's an amazing, like something amazing. It's not. So I very quickly went. When I started my restaurant, I said we don't do storytelling. Like I don't educate my guests with anything. If they have questions, I'll tell them. But like
Yeah.
I'm not going to write these long narratives on my menu about where everything is from, because every scallop is from somewhere.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's been a little bit difficult. So anyway, my point is I have tried to change our approach to hospitality from very chef driven, which it inherently is. Of course, it's my restaurant, but
Yeah.
like in all my restaurants, I keep telling the managers that like basically the kitchen is the assistants of the waiters, and the head chef is the assistant of the general manager or the restaurant manager, right? And
Okay.
it is of course a bit strong, but my point is more that for years, for me, ever since cooking, it's been the other way around, where the chef is the boss in the restaurant, and the cooks, you don't mess with the cooks, and the servers are always timid because they're often part-time workers and all that stuff. Like I've tried to change the our approach to the way we run a restaurant, towards having the front of house managers dictate the pace of service and their priorities, and make sure that everybody understands that the front of house are in direct contact with every guest, and if they come with the need of anything, it is
Hmm.
100% at the interest of the restaurant. While a cook very often has a need that's at the interest of that cook, right?
Yeah.
Or
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
so, and that cook being a lot more aggressive than the part-time waiter will put that waiter in his place. And it's like, that is such a
Yes.
dumb dynamic, you know? So it has made my restaurants a lot more like softer. There's a lot less aggression and a lot less. People feel more like the part-time waiters and those guys. They feel a lot more comfortable asking questions and coming with requests for the kitchen and these type of things. And it requires a very strong cultural change.
That's true. Yeah. That's kind of the way that things used to be run. I mean, before this whole
Right.
chefdom, it was like we're in the service of the customer, right? And everything is in support of getting the customer what they
Yeah.
like,
But
right?
there's been so much innovation led by cooks, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously if all that innovation comes from the kitchen side, you know, all the molecular gastronomy, all these different things, and the restaurant itself stays more or less the same. Of course, the attention shifts towards the kitchen and not towards the front of house, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a place like E&P that has focused a lot on where a lot of the innovation happened in the front of house, then of course the front of house becomes very important, you know. But
Yeah.
still, it's just like people need to we need to. At the end of the day, with the storytelling and all that stuff, we need to read our guests, and we need to have empathy towards our guests and give them what they need, like what all especially in a very small town where you can't curate your clientele the way you can a 18-seat counter on Manhattan, right? So
Yeah. That's very
like
true.
we
Yeah.
need to be there for our guests and give them what they need for that
Yeah.
specific, you know, dinner.
Yeah. Like you said, if you have returning customers, you got to just make sure they're happy, or the restaurant's gonna go under. Especially if you want to keep a restaurant open for as long as you have, you know. So
Yeah, and then you also need to be able to look yourself in the mirror at night. But, you know, the more money I make, the better I look in the mirror. So you know.
Yeah, that's true. What's on the horizon for you? Are you still just like
I
working
don't know.
with the restaurants you have?
That is $1 million question right there. What is on the horizon? I would say there's a nuclear winter on the horizon back home. We've had this. We've been fairly unlucky. I mean, not as unlucky as Ukraine, but the situation in Ukraine has very severely affected energy prices, which has affected people's spending ability. We have a crazy inflation. Food alone is up 13% back home in Norway.
Yeah.
And you know, interest rates are up, and it's just hard financial times back home. That's affected my restaurants a lot. So
Yeah.
back home, I've also expanded. When COVID hit, I decided to go to lean into it and be very, very aggressive. So I opened a bunch of new businesses and new restaurants during COVID. And
why was that? Why did you
because
do
Norway
that?
is a very coddled society. You know, we're one of the richest countries in the world. Everything, you know, healthcare, education, everything is free. If you end up unemployed, you'll never want. You can go unemployed because you're lazy. They say that in the U.S. as well, right? But here, basically,
Yeah.
you'll be poor. In Norway, you won't be
That's
poor the same way, right?
yeah.
And,
So there was a lot of assistance to open the businesses.
not really, but the point is, I mean, sadly, well, not sadly, like despite all that, the restaurant industry is very, very comparable to here. But my
Okay.
point is, it's just our mentality. When something like that happens, we expect the government to take care of us. We get whiny, and we also know that everything will be all right. So I figured, well, that's an opportunity, right? Because if it's one of
Yeah.
my key takeaways from working in the U.S. is here, just everything is more real, more hardcore. So I figured when this happens in March 2020, when this happened, I told my managers, I told them we're going to look for opportunity, and we're going to take this as a boot camp. Like if we have to shut the door of the restaurant, we're not going to take a break. We're going to take that as an opportunity to double down. So,
Wow.
like I made my businesses a lot leaner. I started a management company that manages all my restaurants, and then I started one new restaurant, and I kind of took over a second. I started a roofing company that does like urban gardening on
Okay.
commercial
Cool.
buildings.
Uh-huh. Wow. You got real aggressive.
Sorry.
I said you got real aggressive.
Yeah, and then I
Your,
did some ghost from here in the U.S. Right, so like
wow.
I expanded a lot with zero money, and
Wow.
at the same time took a huge hit in my businesses. So, like
Uh-huh.
liquidity wise, and just financially, it's been really really tough. So I just need to get through this winter, and then hopefully after that, I'll come out of it with a lot of traction.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm trying to be a little bit conservative, but that said, like I don't know, man. I mean, I always want to open more restaurants,
Yeah.
And I also miss cooking. It's taken away a lot from my cooking, though, like because I'm doing all this time. I'm managing so much. But we got the first Michelin star at Lysverket this summer, and like
Yeah.
that
I
has
saw that.
given us.
Congrats.
Thank you. I mean, that's given us. That has enabled us to do what we've always wanted to do there a lot more, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely going to spend more time just refining that restaurant, because it's just so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
going to ask, like, running all these restaurants, it must take away from, well, what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy being in the kitchen and like getting hands on with that kind of stuff? Or do you like running all these restaurants and the
Well, I love
diversity
because I
of it?
kind of love everything about it, Like I
Yeah.
love, I bitch and moan about the HR part of it and these type of things, but the truth is, like,
Yeah.
if I really hated it, I just wouldn't touch it, But I still sit down
Yeah.
with the young cook and I still take it personal, Like I have a lot of employees now, but I still like I think as a restaurateur, if you don't have empathy, you'll never be a good restaurateur, right? Because if it's
Yeah.
to your employees
That's
or
true.
if you don't have it to your guests, like how you can't have it to your guests and then not have it to your employees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So like I enjoy that part. I really love the it sounds weird, but I love P&Ls. You know what I mean? Like I love looking at a P&L and trying to understand the business and trying to figure out ways of improving the business through the P&Ls.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I would say the benefit of having all these kitchens and cooks is that like I'm inherently lazy. So if I have an idea, I
Yeah.
can just tell that cook like, "Do you mind trying out? I have this idea. Do you mind making? Can you just if you just make me a beurre blanc, I'll take it from there." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can kind
Yeah.
of talking a little bit, and I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know. I kind of love it all. I think but I do dream of just like being online a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's also not realistic. I kind of played myself out of that department. It's
Yeah.
unrealistic. All people like me in my position always say that same stuff. I wish I dream of the days I only had one restaurant. I did this, but the truth is, like, when I only had one restaurant, I had no freedom. I couldn't go get away from it. If I went away, the second I stepped away from it, feel so guilty for not being there with the guys. And now I have a lot more
Yeah.
freedom. That I can enjoy.
Yeah.
Like I came into restaurants and cooking because I love restaurants and I love cooking. Now
Mhm.
that I have more restaurants, I hopefully I get to enjoy all of it more.
Well, that's an interesting take. Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Well, damn, man. I don't know what else to say. I appreciate you coming on, man. I really do. Congrats again on the Michelin.
Well,
How does
thanks.
that how has that changed? Has that changed you guys at all? Just out
Yeah,
of
maybe
curiosity.
I raised the prices.
Of course.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did that, but I mean, it changes people's perception of the meal. Like people come in with higher expectations, but it's also partly it's like a bit of like emperor's new clothes. Like because you're a
Yeah.
Michelin restaurant, everything tastes better to them, and I see a lot more
Huh.
like people are proud, like it's part of an experience. It's on people's bucket list, right? Eating at that type of restaurant, so.
Yeah, that's true.
People are a
Yeah,
lot more
for sure.
grateful. They also
Mhm.
get aggressive if you don't deliver,
Oh shit. Yeah.
right? So it's a double-edged sword, but I mean, it's definitely like I am very, very, very grateful for it.
Yeah.
And it's also for a restaurant like ours we've been open for 9 years when we got that star. How do you
Yeah.
keep momentum after 9 years in a town of 300,000 people. Like it was.
That is wild.
Yeah. So that was definitely it definitely came in a good time, like after the pandemic and stuff. So
Yeah.
but more than anything, it just enables me to it gives me the opportunity to do what I do at a higher level now. Like I can't say, well, if I only did this, like we have a Michelin star, like it's not 2 or 3, but it's still, I don't feel like there's something I can't do now that I could only do if I had 2 stars or 3 stars. You know what I mean? Like now I just need to prove that I deserve it.
Yeah. So is your focus now on like keeping it, or are you guys trying to go for a second, or you just try to put it out of your mind?
No, I don't think it's like focus getting a second, because I don't really know what that would be, but I would say we got that star despite of our situation, coming out of the pandemic. And I don't have any investors in the restaurant. Like, I don't have any money. I don't have any investors. So now, like, I've spent a lot of money on plates and cutleries and nicer glasses and all that stuff that you really want that I've always wanted for the restaurant, but I hadn't been able to afford. Mm-hmm. So now I'm trying to put these things in place, right? Have more staff and, just kind of like get the restaurant to where I feel like it deserves to be. And
yeah,
that of course is the same as maintaining or improving the restaurant. I'm not sure exactly if I wanted to take it to a high, to the 2nd star or whatever, then it will probably require a lot more investment. But maybe not. Maybe it just means, now that we have a more sustainable framework to it, maybe it just means like just cooking what we do better and more predictable. And maybe, if you're lucky, then that's 2 stars. But it's not really that big of a deal. Like, I've never done, like, when we opened the restaurant, I said we're not going to do any dumb stuff just to get a star. Like, we're going to do what's natural for the restaurant and what's healthy for the economy of this specific restaurant. And if that's if that is serving burgers in the bar and then the fine dining and a la carte, like a tasting and a la carte, then that's what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't really that. The Michelin back home in Norway or in Scandinavia is usually a certain type of restaurant that has a longer tasting menu and stuff that will get a Michelin star. Not saying that it's the only ones that could get it, but it's often what does get it, right?
Yeah.
Coming out of the pandemic, it made sense for us to just keep one long tasting menu.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then, that coincided with some inspectors' visits and, boom, that's when we got it, So
you just let it happen naturally. Yeah. That's probably a good way to go about it. Instead of chasing it.
Well, we did it. I did articulate it. I said, well, now it makes sense for us to try to go get it, but we didn't do it. I didn't go fundraise for it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do anything stupid for it. I just concentrated more on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it, man. Right. I really appreciate you coming on and talking and stuff. And like I said, I'll let you know when it comes out. And
thanks for having me and good luck with your podcast.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I don't have to make a trip down to Houston and check out the restaurant. So
let me know, man.
All right, man.
All right.
Have a good one.